Okay, so we're picking up where we left off. So if you followed along everything that we did last time, you can just keep working on that file. Otherwise, go to our course blog here that is for October 24th and just download product form f22.xlsm, and that will be just where I left off in class last Thursday or last Wednesday. So let's just kind of review what we did. So remember, the whole idea here is that we are building a user form, a form that will allow us to edit all the information that we have on a single row and be able to put that in such a way that it is kind of all coherently in one, kind of on one page. Maybe I've made things a little bit smaller here than I should, give myself a little more room as I'm building this out. But not only is it going to give us the ability to be able to see more information at once without having to scroll off to the side to see it, but now we can put all kinds of other kinds of data validation tools. Like when we hit save, we're not going to let them save unless they've given us a name and make sure that everything looks right. So we can do things a little bit more sophisticated here by using a user form. So far, what have we done? We've added a label. So remember, labels are text that the user cannot change. As far as the user is concerned, it's static, but you, of course, through code can change the label, the caption of the label to say whatever you want. We also then had a text box, and the text box is text that's meant for the user to be able to change. And so we're putting here, and it's just, type in whatever characters you want to type in there. That's what we're after. And so here will be the product name, and so the user could change the name of the product. This then is a combo box here. Combo box is actually a combination of a text box because you can type into it and a list box, which we're going to see today. And to get the list, you drop down on the arrow and you'll get a list to choose from. And you can pick one of those items. We finished off by creating a set of option buttons here. And the nice thing about option buttons, it's kind of like a combo box. And that is, you've got several to choose from and you can pick one. The nice thing is it's a single click to do it. So with a combo box, you've got to drop down the list and then choose it. So it's a couple of clicks, but here it's just a kind of a different look and feel to be able to get it and make the choice with just a single click because all the options stay visible on the screen at a time. And let's just go ahead and kind of review the code before we start coding again. So the very first procedure that we're after is this user form initialize. So this is going to be the code that executes when that form first loads into memory. The form can really be in three different states. It can be like completely off, and it's saved as a part of the workbook, but it's not in memory, it's not shown on the screen. And when it goes from that state, just saved in the workbook, to being loaded into memory, not yet showing on the screen, that's when the initialize event happens. And remember, the thing that really drives our code on user forms is when an object receives an event, that's what we're going to do to trigger code to make it happen. And so in this case, when the user form object receives the initialize event, and that's when it's first getting loaded into memory, then we're going to say, hey, we want to remember what our row is. And we've got a row variable that we've declared as a module level variable. So once we've set that row, we can read from any of the other sub procedures inside this module, we can read which row we're currently on. And then we've just called show data. There's no reason that we couldn't have put show data, like all the code for show data right here in initialize. I just kind of like to have it organized a little bit differently to be able to say, here's the procedure that shows the data. Here's the procedure that saves the data. And then in our event sub procedures, the sub procedures that respond to events happening, then they're just invoking that basic functionality. And so when we're showing data, everything we're doing is we're reading data off of the worksheet. So we're kind of looking at the data sheet, which is the code name of that worksheet. And we're looking at a particular row and column, whichever row was the active row when we selected, when we opened up the form, and then column number 1, that's where we're pulling off the ID, and then we're plugging that into a control on the form. So into the caption property of the control named LBL ID. Similarly, we're reading a value off of column 6 to plug in the name, and we're bringing that up onto the form. Oh, quick review on how we get the values into the combo box. The first thing that we're doing here is we have to build the list. Remember, the combo box is a combination of a text box and a list box, and so we've got to get the list of options in there. And so we've got a loop that loops across the data here on our lists page. Just take a look at that really quickly. So we've got a list sheet over here that just has various lists on it. And we're just going to loop across all the manufacturers. We're going to read those in, calling our add item method of the combo box. So we have a combo box named CBO MFR. It's a list of manufacturers. And our add item is just putting the options into that. So when the user drops down the list, that's what is going to be visible there. And so this loop, all this loop here is doing is building that list of options to choose from. And then we set the default value the same way that we did for the text box. So we're just going to read a value off of the worksheet and put it into the text property of the control. Same thing here. Read a value off of the worksheet, put it in the text property of the control. Now, for the option buttons, which are these right here, so each item is going to be in one of these departments, and so we're going to pick one of these 4 option buttons. And so all we're saying here is that, let's see, what are we on? Let me on save data here. So on show data, we're looking at what's in column C, and if it says apparel, then we're going to set the value of the apparel option button equal to true. Otherwise, if it says outdoor, we're going to set the value property of the outdoor option button to true. Otherwise, we'll do hunting. If it's not hunting, then it's got to be general, and so it'll put that in. Any questions on getting the data onto the form? How comfortable are we with the code that we reviewed so far today, 0 through 5? Where are you? 5, 4, 5, 4, some 3s. Okay. Save data is just the opposite approach. Now, the one thing we're doing in save data that's interesting here is that as soon as we say save data, we're going to say we got to make sure that this data is savable. And so what we're saying here is that, listen, we want to take a look at what they've typed in for the name property. So look at what they've typed in for the name. So I'm looking at the text property of the txt name object. I'm trimming it to get rid of any leading and trailing spaces. And then I'm looking at the length of that expression. And I'm saying if there's not at least one character there, that's not valid. You cannot give me a product that has no name. And so if this condition is true, then it's a product with no characters in it, perhaps a space, but otherwise nothing else. And we're going to put up a message box that says, hey, you're not allowed to do that. We'll give a little icon next to it that says this is an error, and then a caption at the top. And then if we ended up in here, we've given that feedback to the user and we're done. So we got to exit the sub procedure, because what we're doing after that, if we've passed all the checks that we put in this data validation section, then we're going to just read the data off of the form and write it back out to the worksheet. And so the exit sub is critical here. It'd be really bad to put the message box up that says, here, you can't do that, and then let them save it. So the exit sub is going to get us out of that. Here we're just taking the name of the product, writing it out to the proper sheet, taking the manufacturer, writing it out to the particular place on the sheet. Now, if we're doing the department, it's a little more complicated because we have to see which of our check boxes is true. So if the value property of apparel is checked, then it'll be true. Then we've got to set column C to apparel. And then depending on which one is checked, we'll either put apparel, hunting, outdoor, or general. Okay, and what invokes the save data button is then when the user clicks on the save button. Is that what it is? Save. On the save button. Okay, so now we're ready to move on and do some things a little more complicated. In my mind today, I'm thinking, okay, there's several things I've got to be able to cover so that you know everything you need to know to be able to do the project, because the project for user forms is really pretty similar. Again, you're going to be editing data from a worksheet, bringing it on, and probably the hardest part is going to be dealing with the list box. And so today our main focus is the list box. So here's the idea. If I come back to my product over here, my list of products. Whoa, I didn't mean to zoom in, Control Home. Okay, so we've got a column over here called promo. So column H is like what promotions is currently applied to any one of these products. And the idea here is that if I've got multiple promotions that are currently applied, then it's just going to be the number of the promotions separated by a comma. So if I come here and look at my lists, I can see that my promotions are here in column A. And what was that one? It said promotions 1 and 4 are currently applied to this first particular product. So free shipping, and there's some kind of discount that goes along with it. Now, when the promotion of a discount is here, we're going to have to know what the discount is. And so column I is a discount percent. But column I, that discount percent is only going to be relevant if there's a promotion applied. So there's going to be some kind of complexity in there that we're going to want to work out on the user form. So, but let's first start off by just getting it to where we can put the promotion and be able to deal with multiple promotions. So for that, we're going to use a list box. So the list box is this next tool over. So we've dealt with these first three. Well, this first one isn't a control at all. It's just saying I don't want to use a control. I'm just selecting objects. But then this is our label, static text for the user, text box, user type something in, combo box where they can type something in or pick from the list. And now we're getting to list box, which is just, you got to pick one of these options. So I'm going to choose the list box control and I'll bring it on here next to my department. There's not going to be that many promotions in here, so won't make it all that big. And I probably will want to label this as the promotion. So I'm going to put a label right here above it. And change the caption to say promotion. Okay, now similar to our combo box, we've got to put the options that are going to be available for this. So since we're going to be referring to this through code by, actually putting the list in and being able to read which one the user has selected, I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. So this is a list box, so I'll prefix it with a LST. I'll just call it promo, LST promo. So now when I refer to that through code, I'll be able to have some sense I'm dealing with a list box and it's my promotions that I'm working with. All right, well, let's go ahead and read the options into this one. This is going to be so close to working with the, so close to doing the like putting the list of manufacturers in. I'm going to copy that loop and paste it in, we'll modify it. So this is going to be the promotion list box. And we're reading those out of column number 2. And I'm just going to call LST promo add item. Actually, that'll be column number B, column letter B. And so as long as there's a value starting in row 2, as long as I can continue to see a value in column B, I'm just going to add those items into the list. And that should now give me the list of my promotions. And what are those promotions? Those promotions are free shipping, free warranty, buy one, get one free, and some discount. So now if I show my form, I should get those choices here: free shipping, free warranty, buy one, get one free, and discount. Looks like I can go a little bit wider on that form or on that list box. So I'll go here. All right, so I think I'm kind of ready to move on, but I know I did that kind of quickly. So anyone saying, give me just another minute to get caught up? Yeah. Okay, so this was the code that we've added. So we added the list box, named it, and then here's the code. I'll give you a minute to kind of get that caught up. Any questions while we're getting that code going? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, so how do I get to the actual form, to see the user form? To show it working or to edit it? So I'm just going to click the play button while I'm editing the code. and that will play that for me. So yeah, if I'm, normally that play button will play whatever sub procedure I'm on, but if that sub procedure is part of a form, then it's gonna say, oh, I guess you want to launch the form. Here's the code that we have added. Okay. Now, in this case, this list box, and kind of the thing that a list box allows me to do that a combo box doesn't, is a list box gives me the opportunity to allow multiple items to be selected. So let's just take a look at the default behavior here. So right now, my default behavior, this is going to be single select. When I select one, it unselects whichever other one was chosen. So this would have been a pretty good way to do our department. We could have had our departments listed here in a list box and just chosen the department with a single click. I really use the option buttons for the department just so you could see kind of how option buttons work. But what I need to be able to do for promotions is I need to be able to say, wait a minute, there's free shipping and there's a % discount. I need to be able to select multiple ones here. And by default, that list box only lets me choose a single one. There's a property I have to change to allow it to have multiple ones selected at the same time. So let's go ahead and change that property first. So I'll select my list box, and I'm going to come and find the property named Multiselect. So here's a property named Multiselect, and let me zoom in. So the Multiselect property is going to give me the choice to do three things. Single is no multi-select at all. It is just you click one and it unselects everything else. Multi-select multi is you turn each choice on and off independently with a click. So you click it once, it turns it on, you click it again, it turns it off. Extended works like selecting files in the File Explorer. So if you hold the Control key down, you can click individual ones, but if you click the first one and then hold the Shift key down and click the last one, it'll select all the ones between them. So I think for this one, it probably makes most sense to use multi, so kind of independent click on and click off, because it's not like there's a range of items that we're going to plug in all at once. These are kind of like a series of individual choices. But those are your three options for multi-select. But now that we have multi-select chosen, if I show this, I should be able to, be on the form, not a property. Then I should be able to select free shipping and the discount together. And again, I just toggle each one on and off by clicking on it. Okay, so now that I've got multi-select chosen, I'm ready to actually select the items that I want to have selected. Now, this is a little bit more complicated because now that I've got, let's go ahead and run it again. Now that I've got multiple items, any of which can be either on or off, I've got to have some way to tell kind of at the level of this list which one is on, which one's off. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of for debugging purposes here, I'm going to put a new button onto this form. So let me just bring in another command button, or maybe I'll just copy my save button. And I'll label this one, caption on this one is going to be just debug. Or actually, I'll call it break mode. So kind of a difficult thing here is that getting my code into break mode so I can kind of poke around and see what's going on in a form is a little bit more complicated than just when I'm making a sub procedure. In a sub procedure, I just put a breakpoint and run it and it hits it there. And I can do that same thing here, but there's really no code that I want to break into. I just want to take myself into break mode on the form itself. So behind my break mode button, and I'm just going to leave it command button 1 because I'm going to end up deleting this before this goes into production. I'll just double click that, and here I'm just going to put the keyword stop. So when I click that button, it's going to take me into break mode. It'll get me back to my code editor with the form still loaded in memory, so I can kind of poke around and see what's going on with that particular form. So now if I hit play on this form and hit break mode, I can now come to my immediate window and I can kind of look at things here. So I could say, gosh, I'm interested in seeing something about my list promo list box. And maybe I'm interested in the list count. There's a property called list count that tells me how many items are in the list. How many items are in my list? Yeah, there's 4 different promotions that I have in there. And so that should tell me that there's 4. Now, and that works only because I'm in break mode, right? If I wasn't in break mode and just tried to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and stop my code. If I try to run that right now, it's going to say, we don't know what you're talking about. We don't even know what list promo is because this form's not loaded into memory. So by making a button here that will take me into break mode just with the keyword stop on it, then I can run that form, go into break mode, and then I can kind of look around and see what's going on with that form at that moment, like kind of where it is. There's a couple other things that I'm interested in looking at here. So the next thing that I want to point out is that there's a property for this list box. It's the same for a combo box, by the way. It has a property called list. And the list is an array property that has the whole list in it. So I should be able to look at list sub 0, and that should tell me what item is in the list at that position. So list 0, list 1, list 2, all the way up to list 3, I should have all of those items there. So if I ever need to kind of go look at the individual items in the list, I can do that using the list property, and it's an array. It's just exactly like the arrays that we used, a couple of weeks that we first got introduced to a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so now there's a parallel property called selected. And it is also an array. So I can look at the number 0 spot, and right now it's telling me that the number 0 spot of my selected array is false. So right, I've got a list array with all my options, and I've got a parallel array called selected, and right now nothing is selected, and so those are all going to be false. Can I toggle that while I'm in break mode? I'm not sure if I can. Yeah, so I can turn on the number 1 there. And now I should be able to come and ask this one, and it should tell me that it's selected. So if I look at the number 3, the very last one, right now it's false because my number 3 item, the 4th one that appears there, is false. But if I turn that on, make it selected, then that will become true. So I have this array that is exactly the same size as the list. That's just a Boolean array. It has the values true or false in it. And so through code, if I set an element of that array to be true, then it will select that item. That's how I select individual items when I have multi-select on. So let's go ahead and figure out what are we going to have to do to be able to look at this column H, and get that split out into these items. Whew. All right. Any idea, any suggestion as to maybe one of the procedures that we've learned, or the statements we've learned in VBA that would help us with this particular task? I want to be able to look at what I've got here in column H. I mean, let's say I'm going to open up here on line number 2, my very first product. And I want to be able to check the appropriate promotions. So in this case, we're saying promotion 1 and promotion 4 are selected, which is free shipping and a discount. So what might be useful? Yes. Okay, so this is a string right now, And it would be really nice if we had those as individual elements. And so we'll make an array using the split function. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's come to where we're loading. So our show data. So here we've got the promotion list box. Maybe another comment here. Select the appropriate promotions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set this up as a variable. So let me dim promos as, and this is going to be a variant type. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, listen, I want to run this function, this split function that's going to return an array. And the way that I'm going to be able to connect up a variable to that array so I can refer to it is going to be by making a variant type. Remember, the variant is the data type that can do anything. It comes with a little bit of expense, 22 bytes of overhead to be able to use variant. I'm only using one of them, so I'm not too worried about it. So now I'll just say promos equals, and then I'm going to split the data that I have there in column H. So call the split function. I'm going to look at whatever I have in column H. So my data sheet cells, whatever my current row is, column H. So that's the comma delimited string that I'm looking at. And I'm going to split it based on a comma. Looks a little bit strange to use a comma to separate my arguments and when it is an argument, but that's what that says. I'm going to go ahead and put a stop right here. So I can just, and this will be strange because it's going to stop the form before it ever shows. But that should be okay. I'll go ahead and run this. I've stopped right there. And so now I should be able to look at my promos. Well, first, actually, my upper boundary, UBOUND, of promos. Where ubound is the function that tells me what's the upper boundary of an array. And so our arrays start at 0. So I've got 2 items in here. That's right. I've got a 1 and a 4. So I should be able to look at promos sub 0 and see the 1. And promos sub 1 and see the 4. So I've now split that string into an array that I can refer to individually. Questions? Okay, so now that I have that array, what I want to do is iterate across that array and just be able to, change the appropriate entry in my selected property of that list box. Whew. Now, I've been using R just as a long integer, to refer to different, the rows that I'm working with, but I should be okay just to use that one here as well. So I'm just going to say for R equals 0 to the upper boundary of promos. So I'm going to iterate across all of those, all the entries that are here. So now here's the trick. I'm going to look and see what's in my promos position at the rth position. So the first time through, I'll be looking at the 0th one, promotion number 1. And what position in my selected array do I want to set to true when promo number 1 is the selected one? Yeah, it's going to be offset by 1. Because if I look at my promos, they're actually numbered, like the first promotion is 1. And that's going to be the number 0 spot in my array. And so I'm going to have to offset these by 1. So what I'm going to say is my LST promo dot selected array. And now I'm going to tell it, where do I want to look? So I want to look at let's leave that blank for now. We'll get that filled in just a minute, and I'm going to set that to true. All right, so this is how I'm going to set an entry of one of my list boxes to be selected. So now, ultimately, what I want to put in here, the first time this executes is I want to say, I want the number 0 position in my array to be set to true. Right, so when the first promotion is in that list, I got to set the number 0. So when the number 4 promotion is in the list, I got to set the number 3 equal to true. Okay. So remember that what I've done is I've read the data from the cell into this promos array. So I'm going to look at that promos array at the rth position, right? Because I'm using R to iterate across that. And so the first time through, this is going to give me 1, but I don't want to select 1. I want to offset that by 1. So when I'm looking at in my array here of promotions, when I've got a 1 there, I want this to be 0. And that should do it for me. This code is a little bit complex because we've got a few different moving parts here. We're referring to an array here to say which one's selected, but we're actually looking into another array to find out what the index of that array should be, and then we're offsetting it by 1. I'm going to go ahead and comment out my stop here, so this form will actually load. Make sure that I have row number 1 selected. I do. And now I'll go ahead and run the form. And so now we see that I've got those 2 coming in being selected. Ooh. That was a lot to bite off. Anyone want some explanation here? Question? Show me how comfortable you are with the code. We'll come to your question in just a second. So on the code that we just wrote, I'm seeing 3s, 4s, 3s. So we're not totally confident with it. Now there's a question here. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this split function that we use, is that just take a string input and change it to an array based on where we say split?
That's exactly what the split function does. So we'll just give an example. So for the recording, the question was, does that split function just make an array based on the delimiter specified? And the answer is yes. So let's suppose that I'm calling split. And the string that I'm splitting here is just exactly what we're looking at in the list of promotions. And I'll say I want to split that based on a comma. And so this is going to be an array. So I've got to tell it which index I want to see. And that should print, what should this print? So I'm asking to print the number 1 position of the array that's the result of the split function. Right, so here's the number 0 position, and that will be the number 1 position. So that should print the 4. If I add, some other options in here, then I can go a little higher. The number 4 position is the 5. The number 6 position is the 3, and so forth. Okay, question here?
Thinking about cases, if there's only 1 and it's stored as an integer, will the split function still work, and will it work if it's an integer?
Hey, that's a really good question. So the question is, well, what happens if there's only 1 item in here? Then my only index is going to be 0, and it will still split that into an array. So even though it doesn't find the delimiter in the string that it's going to split, it says, oh, I guess there's only 1 entry, and it returns that as a single array with just the 1 variable in it, just the 1 value.
Will it always read out the string, or like if you remove the quotations around?
Yeah, so yeah, what if it's not a string? And the answer is it will convert it to a string and it will still work. So yeah, that's again, the philosophy of VBA is saying, well, this doesn't quite make sense on an integer, but we could convert that to a string and then we could be okay. Now, the other question is, what if there's nothing there? So what if it's empty? So if we have a 0 length string, and we split that, I think it's going to give us a 0 length string. I think I'll be okay. No, it gives me nothing. So yeah, when there's nothing there, then the array has no elements in it. Interesting. So we're going to want to deal with that. Let's just kind of see where our code fails when we do this on an empty one. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I think we put hotkeys on this. What was it? Control-Shift-E to launch that? Looks like it works okay. And it's because we're splitting that into an array, but there's no elements in it. And so we never actually cycle across that to see which one to do. So no error. Nice. So we'll check here on this one that's 2, Control-Shift-E, and we're getting our free warranty then selected there. So that's it in terms of getting the data to show properly. Now we've got to read the data and write it out to the worksheet. That will actually be pretty simple. So let's go ahead and do it. So we're down in my save data procedure. Save data. A comment here. This is going to be promotions. All right, someone want to kind of give me an algorithm, talk me through what we're going to need to do to be able to write the values into the cell. So what property of the list box am I going to have to look at to find out which ones are selected? Go ahead. That's right.
Yeah, kind of like we did with departments.
So the suggested is, could we just do kind of a bunch of else, kind of if, else if, looking through our departments, like we did for departments. And that would work okay if we were only selecting a single one. But what we have to do is we have to be able to say which ones of are selected. But we'll definitely be looking at the selected array. Well, select case and so the question is, maybe you should use select case instead of if, else if, else if. And the answer is select case and if, else if are really, really similar to each other. And so that's not going to get us there. So what I'm going to need to do, or go ahead. Right, so go across the selected array, write a loop that goes across the selected array. And yeah, look at each one that's true. And when it's true, then I know I'm close to the number that I need to be able to build the string. So let's go ahead and build a string as a variable. We'll iterate across the selected array, find out which ones are true, and we'll put the proper numbers into that string, and then we'll write that string out to the cell. So let me go ahead and dim here, active promotions. As a string. And then let's see, do we already have, I'm going to need some control variable to loop across my array. So I'm going to dim x as an integer for x equals 0 to the upper boundary. Or why don't we do this? I don't think we've used the list property yet, or the list count. So LST promos dot LST-PROMOS promo. There we go. LST promo dot list count. Now, if there are 4 things in my list, list count will be 4, and I want this to go from 0 to 3. So I'm going to be going from 0 to 1 minus, or to the list count minus 1. Alternatively, I could have said to go to the upper bound of LST promo dot selected. Right, so these both get at the same thing, right? Because this is just saying go from 0 to the upper boundary of the array, which has a number that's actually valid for the array, whereas the list count will be off by 1. Next. Okay, so then inside this loop, I just want to check to see if, when I'm looking at the X position of my selected array, if it's selected. So if looking at list promo.selected at the position I'm currently looking at, because remember, selected is an array, so I'm going to look at these one at a time. If that is equal to true, then we want to do something. And what do we want to do? I want to put some value into my active promotions. So active promotions equals what it used to be concatenated with a comma, concatenated with, if I put X here, X is going to start at 0. And so my first promotion is going to have an index of 0, but the promotion number that the system thinks of it as is, starting at 1. So I'm going to add 1 on. So if I would just kind of think about what's going to happen here, let's see if I can just kind of draw it in here. So let's suppose that I've got my selected array here. So this is list promo dot selected, and I'm going to have in here at the 0 position, it's either going to be true or false. Say it's true. At the 1 position, it's false. At the 2 position, it's true. And at the 3 position, it's false. Okay, so in this case, I would have, I forgot what those promotions are. I've got 1 and 3 selected, which is free shipping and buy 1, get 1 free. So supposing that this is kind of what my selected array looks like when I run my code to go read this, let me go ahead and put my active promotions in here. So here's the string that I'm kind of trying to build up here. So as I'm iterating across this loop here, when X is 0, I'm looking at this one. So my selected sub X will be true. So what am I going to do? Active promotions is going to be equal to what it currently is. Well, what it currently is a 0-length string. And so it'll be that concatenated with a comma. So I'm going to plug a comma in here and then X plus 1. So I'm on X equals 0. And so that should put a 1 there. We'll get to the next here. X will go up to 1. I'm going to be looking at my selected array at the number 1 position. That's going to be false. And so since this expression is false, we skip the if. We come to the next value for X. Now X is equal to true. I'm sorry, X is equal to 2. And so when I get to here, it's looking at the selected array in the number 2 position that is true. So I'll come in here and say active promotions now is going to equal what it used to be, this, concatenated with a comma, and then concatenated with X plus 1. So that should put a 3 in there. So at the end of running this, when the number 2 and the number 1 and number 3 are selected, that's what active promotions should be. We just go ahead and put a stop right here and we'll see if that's what we get. Whew. We'll go ahead and run this. I'm going to select 1 and 3 and hit save. So now let's take a look at active promotions and see what's in it. I got comma 1, comma 3. Show me how comfortable you are with this loop. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Okay, excellent. Now, I think I'm ready to write this out into the right cell. So that's in column H. So I'm going to say that equals. Now, the trouble is I don't want this leading comma in here. And so instead of just writing out active promotions, I'm going to write out using the mid function, looking at active promotions. And starting at the second character, and then if I don't put another argument on there, it'll just take to the end of the string. So that should then just write that data out to the cell if I spelled things correctly. Oh, I spelled promotions wrong from the beginning. You guys saw that and you said, oh, we're not going to say anything. P-R-O-M-O. Yeah. Hey, Professor Allen, you were on a roll. It's a sourdough roll. Delicious. Okay. Active promotions, active promotions, active promotions. We'll change that to be 1 and 3, and I'll save. Oh, you did help me on that one. Thank you. And that should have put 1 and 3. Was it 1 and 3 I had selected? I have 2 and 4 selected. Maybe I did 2 and 4. Oh yeah, it was 2 and 4. We'll go back to 1 and 3. And we can see it hitting 1 and 3 here. This should be 1, 2, and 3. 4 only. So pretty good. Okay. Questions? Anyone have a question on this or want to talk about it? Okay, so now we have the interesting situation of saying what we need is we now need a %. So when discount is selected, whatever we have here in I is going to be relevant. Now we have a couple of options. One, we can make it so it doesn't even show on the form unless discount is selected. Or two, we can let it show always, but just be disabled, kind of grayed out if it's not selected. And that's actually, I think, the one that I prefer. So you can see it's there, but it's not active until we click on discount. Now this one's going to be a little bit more involved because it's not when we hit save, but the very act of clicking on that and selecting that item should turn on, kind of enable my discount option. So let's just work on getting code to execute when discount gets checked. So let's talk in terms of object and event. So we want some code to be executed when a particular object receives a particular event. The object is going to be this list box. So LST promo is going to be my the object. So I'll just double click that to take me to the code, and it's guessed that I want the click when the list promo gets clicked on. That might do the trick. Let's just do this. Let me just do a debug.print. Actually, what I need to do here is I need to know if discount has been selected. There's a couple options I could take. I could just assume that discount is always going to be the fourth option, in which case I just have to look in the selected array at the number 4 position, the number 3 position, 0, 1, 2, 3, the last position. Oh, that's dangerous. Why is that dangerous? Why is it dangerous to assume that it's the 4th position?
It could be rearranged later.
Yeah, kind of our whole point here is that we're giving the user the ability to do this. And so I think what we want to do is we want to check to make sure that it's that actually the text of the selected one is discount. If the one that says discount is selected, we have a couple of options for this. One, we could say at the time it changes, let's just look across them all and see which one says discount. Two, we can remember which one says discount when the form gets loaded. So instead of saying we're going to assume it's always promotion number 4, let's just pay attention to the one that says discount. I think I like that one better. So when the form loads, it can't change it while the form is loaded. So when the form loads, we'll keep track of where the discount, what the index number of the discount is. Let's do it that way. So I'm going to come here to my initialize. And in initialize, and we want to keep track of it. But I think before that, I'm going to need a module level variable to keep track of what my discount index is. So let me come up here to the top of my sub procedure and dim discount index as an integer. Truth is, byte would probably do the trick. Am I going to have more than 256 different promotions? Probably not. I'm definitely not having more than 32,000. So I'm going to be happy with integer. So discount index. So now when I initialize, I'm sorry, when I load my data and I'm filling in my promotions, yeah, I think right here, I just want to say, hey, if the one that I'm just entering, let's see, promotion list box. Yeah, if the one that I'm just entering is discount, I want to keep track of what that is. So let's say if something, then, and if discount index is going to equal something. So, all right, so here's the one that I just added. Oops. So if that is equal to discount, then I probably see that just got added. So that will be like my list count, the list count -1. And my discount index will be LST promo dot list count -1. So when I put it in the fourth one, list count will be 4, the index will be 3. That's what I'm after. So now I'm remembering which of all my promotions is the discount. And I have access to that in a variable called discount index. So now when the user clicks, go find that. When the user clicks on LST promo, let me just do a debug.print of my discount index and of LST promo dot selected sub discount index. So this should always show me 3, and this should show me either true or false, depending on whether the discount is selected or not. So I can see that happening. I'm going to go ahead and split my screen. Scroll over here to where we're seeing the promotions and Control-Shift-E to edit that. Okay, so each time this changes, it's not happening when it, interesting. I thought that when I clicked on this, it would be executing that code. LST promo click, so click isn't doing it. Seems like it should. So it looks like we've got the wrong event. So what might be a different event for us to choose on this? Yeah, I think change would be a good one for us to try. So it's called change. I'll just bring that code from down below up there, delete the click, and call this, ooh, what have I done? We've got it unchanged. Let's see what that one does. Control Shift E. There we go. So when that one's selected, it's going true or false. Toggle. It doesn't matter what the rest of these are, but each time one of these changes, it's going to check to see if that discount is true. So now, if that discount is selected, that's when we're going to want to show or enable the part of our form that shows what the discount is. So let's go ahead and build the form out to have that discount available. And I think I just added a new form. I didn't mean to do that. Remove. Okay, good. So now I'm going to bring on, let's do this. Just a little text box. The right one. Text box. And I'll call this txt discount. And I'll put a label above it that just says discount %. Change the caption of that. And so our two options are to make this appear and disappear, or to just make this kind of be disabled when it's not. And we may have time to do them both. So let's start off by just disabling it. Now, it turns out there's a property for a text box. In fact, all of these controls have a property called enabled. By default, that property is true. If you set it to false, then it's just disabled. The text goes from black to gray, and you can't select it. You can't even give the focus to that control. So this control is called txt discount. I'm going to come back to my code. So now instead of just printing this out, I'm going to say if the discount index is selected, then we want txt discount dot enabled equal to, so if it's selected, we want it to be true. Otherwise, we want it to be false. And so that should change that between being enabled or not. Control Shift E to edit. Okay, so right now discount is enabled. I'm going to go ahead and put something in here, 10% discount. And let's see if I toggle this on and off, you can kind of see it changing to gray. So when it's gray, it's not selectable. When it's black, I can come in and edit it. Now, this is interesting because this says, when this expression is true, I want this expression to be true. When this expression is false, I want this expression to be false. There's a shortcut here. Do you see what it is? What I'm going to do is, instead of using an if statement to do this, I'm just going to set my, I'm going to set the enabled property, come on, equal to the selected of that particular index. So instead of saying, if one thing's true, make this other thing true, otherwise make it false, I'm just going to set it equal to the other thing. So when I'm looking in the selected array at the discount index, if that is true, then this thing will be enabled. If that is false, it will be disabled. So this code will work exactly the same as what we had before. So it's toggling that enabled on and off. Questions? Well, at this point, we just need to be able to now actually get the data in there for the discount percent and to be able to save it. So let's go ahead and txt discount, which is in column I, come up here to where I'm reading the data. Put in my discount. We'll just read the value out of column I. And then writing it back is just flipping that. I mean, text boxes are really easy. So when it's time to write the data back, we'll just reverse the order. So now when I run it here with a 10% discount, oh, it's a little bit different here because I've got that as a discount percent, Control Shift E. That's a 1/10 of 1% discount. That's not much of a discount, actually. So looks like I need to scale this because in the workbook, we're keeping it this way. Actually, I think what we'll do is we'll just change our workbook to say, you know what, that's 10%. This is 30%. I'm just going to keep it the same way. %10 discount. If I change this to 15% discount, even if I toggle that off, that'll still be 15. And when I save it, it should write that 15% out here. Interesting to me that it wrote it out there as a string rather than as a number. Putting it flush left instead of flush right. To change it to 20%, it's got to be active. And then we can save it. Questions here? I'm just curious what happens if I convert this into a number. So instead of just, oh, I was a little bit sloppy here. VBA is helping me out here. This is an object. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to read from the worksheet and write to an object. What have I forgotten to put here? Yeah, there should be a property here that I just, now VBA was like, oh, you know, you didn't tell me the property, you must mean the text property, but I prefer to write it out. It should do that down here as well. But it happens that was the default property. Well, let me convert it to a long double precision floating point number, CDBL. That should move it from a string to a number when it writes out. And I'm hoping that'll make that into a number rather than, because this is a number shown as text. Control Shift E, save, yeah. So interestingly, that when I wrote that out as a string, it recognized it as text and formatted the cell to be text. This will now actually force it to be a number. So convert to double. Could convert to single to an integer. If we're only doing percentages that are integers, we can convert to an integer as well. Questions? Yeah. So this is a function that converts to double. So this converts to a double precision floating point number. The whole series of these convert functions that are built into VBA. So C, convert to integer. If I've got some string 3, that'll be an integer. And if I ask for the type name of that, that'll tell me it's an integer. SNG will be a single precision floating point number. I should be able to convert that to a date. That makes into a date. So yeah, I'm going to say all the data types have a convert to it. I'm not 100% sure they all do, but I can't think of one that doesn't. So you can convert to any data type. Yeah.
For end users trying to type a percent sign when they're typing whatever they want.
Ah.
And I just tested it, and it just gives you a runtime error. Is there something you can do to say, like, if there's a weird character, just go with it?
Sure. Now the question is, I know users, and they're going to try to put a percent on that form. So let me run this again. We're actually going to come in here and put 20%. So a couple of things we could do. I think the first thing to do is to put a percent, maybe just move that percent there to out here, outside here. So they would signal them not to type it in. But yeah, what could we do here? Sure. In fact, I think we wrote a function called numbers only when we're working on the ISBN. So we can just copy that over and we could plug that in here. I'm wondering if there's kind of a built-in something that would deal with the percent. I can't think of anything that would do it built in, but we certainly could iterate across every character and kind of throw out everything that's not a number, or we could just ask if it is numeric, and if not, put a message. Why don't we do that? Let's do that as part of the data validation. So I'm going to come to where we are saving, and we'll put another data validation rule in. So here's save data. I'll just copy that whole block. And what I want to know is if my txt discount dot text, if that is a number. Okay, so if it is numeric, that's what I expect it to be. So let's say if not is numeric, then message box, the discount percent must be only numbers. So that should keep us from having a runtime error if the user does type that in. I'm not sure what I just did, but that was neat. Control-Shift-E. I'll put the percent on here. It's got to only be numbers. But I do like the idea of saying, you know, if they just put a percent there, we could figure that one out. If they type anything besides numbers, 30, then just kind of strip everything out and just leave it as the numbers. Okay. That is enough to do what you want to do, what you need. I think I've covered everything you need to do for the project. So let's also look at what it would mean to make this thing disappear, not just be disabled, but disappear. It's really simple. So let's see. So where we are, user form initialize. So when the promo changes, we are setting this to enabled. We'll just change that to visible. We might actually want to also do the discount percent as well, but we'll make it so that that actually disappears when there's no discount there. So we'll do that next. Let's come back to our code. Since I'm going to be referring to this through code, I'm going to call this LBL discount. So I'll just call this LDL discount. Dot visible equals my text discount dot visible. So I'm going to set my text discounts visibility here, and then I'm just going to make the label match it here. BISIBLE, stop. So now thing just goes away when it's not there. The point is, you can either make things invisible, you can make them enabled or disabled. That's fine. Any questions? All right, let's call that good for today. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed. Yeah.
So I'm working on the Boggle project.
Yeah, when does that do?
When does it due?
Yeah.
Today.
It's today. Okay.
Yeah. I can't figure out how to, long story short, what I'm trying to do is put the cell that I've already written into an array. And I'm going to say, if we go into another cell and we've already written into that cell, then skip. So I'm trying to just add that cell number, add a number to an array. I've declared an array. I've said redim preserve the array. I mean, I can just show you, but what I'm trying to do is just add to the end of it. I just want to put a number into an existing array, and it keeps giving me that the subscript is out of range. If there's an easier way to just add a number to an existing array, and that array is blank in the beginning, there's nothing in it. If there's an easier way.
Yeah, I think maybe what would be easier here is kind of like the selected array that we just talked about here. Make up the Boolean array that's the right size. So when you're after you put something into that position, you just change your false to true.
Okay, so like the been used thing that we did last week. Okay, I did miss last week, and I was trying to understand that code, but frankly, I just didn't really get it.
So this is different than that. So that what that been used did was it looked through another array, where you're just putting something into the array. Here, like putting the index number in here. Actually, that would work. That's actually what you're trying to do here. What you're trying to do here is you're trying to start off small and just grow it.
Yeah.
The example of the beginning class was start out full size, double it up with -1, so you don't accidentally. So you don't say, oh, once there, it has to be placed. And then just fill that slot in. But alternatively, you could say, so you've got 25 dice.
Mhm.
So when you're placing something into array from 5 to 4, and so I'm going to put that into the number 4 spot. But now you want to say 4 is used, right?
Yeah.
So you have another array, it's Boolean, true or false. And it's the same size, 0 to 25, 0 to 24.
Okay.
And so when you write to number 4 here, over here in your select array, you just change the number 4 position to true. It'll start off all as false. Then you look at that array at number 4 position and say, oh, have I already used this slot? Yeah.
I mean, I think I understand it conceptually, but
Here's another approach. So you kind of grab everything you've selected at the time.
Yeah.
Say, okay, now you've selected the face off that time. You're going to put B into this. So you randomly select a position to put B or to put that letter, and say it comes up with 16 in the 16th spot. So at that point, you're going to go write that letter out to the worksheet. And the worksheet already has the letters that you're writing on top of it. What you could do is you could start off by saying step 1, erase all the letters from the worksheet.
I did that.
So now, when you're getting ready to write to 62, you pull number 16. You're gonna say, before I write that out, go look at the number 16 spot and see the blank. If it is, we're ready to write. If it's not blank, it's already been used. Maybe just count up one and look for the next one. Or you can say, pick another random number. I mean, it picks random numbers so fast.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what I did. So I said if is empty, the random cell that we've just chosen, if that's true, then do this stuff. If it's not empty, so
Tell worksheet function. Oh, until you've got 25 in there.
yeah,
So you're counting them. And then where are you creating that? Must be creating that above that.
yeah, right.
Okay, so
above.
you don't have to show. Random reference. You're making a cell. If is in array.
And that's a function that I declared down
That's
here.
what you were working on. Or is that working?
I think it's working. Yeah, because what I'm doing is I'm saying if this cell. Oh, and then the cell, yeah, so I'm trying to do that cells use thing. Okay, but what you said is to say if the random cell that we've just chosen, if it's empty,
Then you're ready to go.
then I do this. And if it's not empty, then pick another random number.
Yeah.
Frankly, I'm trying to think why I didn't think of that already.
Should go pretty well.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna